Welcome to this video. So in the previous video, we began we started building the file system, right? So in this video, I just want to continue where we left off. And the very first thing that I want to do is add additional properties. So previous video, we added methods that we will later implement. But right now, I want to add additional properties that will be useful to the file system class. So first thing, let's just do a quick overview of what we currently have. So right now we have a file system that can take in the storage, right? And when it takes in the storage, it can communicate with the storage. So it does that by probably taking an instance of the storage class. Then it defines a block size of 5, then it has a list of blocks. So we can actually see it just like this over here. This, we have all of these tiny dots. We can see it as our storage device that stores the values as bytes. And then we have this block size, which is 5. This is one block, this is another block, and altogether this makes up 10 blocks, right? So this is exactly what we're just going to try to like implement. But the very first thing I want to do now is sort of like add the directory, because currently right now we don't have a directory, and the directory is going to be a single level directory. So for that, I'm just going to use the dictionary in Python. So each file is going to be in this dictionary here, and there'll be a key to the file. So if you want to get a file, you just get it by from the key name, which could also be the file name, to the file. So that's for the directory. To remove the squiggly lines, let me import a dictionary dict from typing. Then the next thing, we want to create additional properties, but I won't be defining the properties like the way I did here. Rather, what I'll be using is the Python add property decorator. So basically, I want to get the total storage of the file system, and the best way of getting this total storage of the file system is from the storage device, because the amount of space that your storage device can store is what determines what your file system, the size of your file system. Although technically, if you're doing partitions, it will be different, but for now we're not doing partitions or anything. So so the storage device stores its size and the capacity. So we are just going to like access that value directly. So what we just do is at total space will be equals to return self.storage.capacity. So this is what we're going to do. So it's using this instance here to get its capacity. So we go on. So the next thing I actually want to do now is sort of like, with data classes, Python defines the init function for you. So the init function, if you're not familiar, is more like the constructor. It's the very first method that gets called when you create a Python class, right? But with data classes, Python does that for you. But if you have any other thing you actually want to do, like after, you can add it in the post init. So that is after initialization. After all of these values have been created, what comes next? So what I want to do here is actually create the blocks. Right after initialization, the next thing I want to do is create all of these blocks here, depending on the values the user provided. So the very first thing is, I want to get the number of blocks. So the number of blocks is the total storage space divided by the block size. So in this case, let's say we right here we have a total storage space of, let me see, I believe this is 50. Yeah, this is 50, and we have a block size of oh, should I say block size? Yeah, block size of 5. So 5 divided by 50 is telling us our total amount of blocks is actually 10, right? Just like what we have here. So that's what that. Okay, so now that we've gotten our number of blocks, the next thing we have to do is create our blocks, right? So after the post initialization, we've gotten the number of blocks we have. We are now like, okay, let's create our blocks. So to create our blocks, we just do, based on the number of blocks that we got from this calculation, which is 10, we create a for loop, and we are going to append each block into this property, the blocks property here. So this is where we're doing the creation. So let me just go to the block class right here. So you can see the block class just has an ID, the starting block. So if it's starting here, this is where it's starting, a boolean value that says if it's empty or not, then an optional next block, right? But during creation, there's going to be no next block, right? So what we have here is the ID, right? The ID is the block ID. What identification is the block, and which is the same as the index from the number of block. Then this part here is just we saying like the starting position of the block. So since we have a block size of 5, we can just say the current ID multiplied by 5. So if we're at block 0, 0 times 5 is 0. If we're at block 1, 1 times 5 is 5. So we get that particular place where that block is starting from. So that is for our block creation. Then the next thing we have to do is let's create another property, right? Another property method, and that's for the free space. We want to calculate how much free space is available in our file system. So this is also so what we do is we get, so if we remember, I just showed you that we have an is empty value. So whenever a block is empty, it's set to true. Yeah, true, I guess. If it's empty, it's set to true. So what we want to do is we want a situation we check. We want to basically get all blocks that are free. That means is empty is equals to true, and we use the combination of list comprehension and yeah, list comprehension to get these values, to get the free blocks. So when we get the free blocks, what we do is we multiply the amount of free blocks times the block size. So think about it. If we have 2 free blocks, we're just basically going to say that 2 times 5 and we get 10. That means our values are 10, right? So that is how we get that calculation. Then I guess the last thing we just have to do is just create one method that will just give us the total space and the free space we have available. So with that, I'll say that we are done. But I guess one thing we could just do is just sort of like play around with this now. So let's create a storage, right? So let's just play around with this file system now. Let's create a storage, right? So the storage, if we remember correctly, takes in, what are the values it takes in? It takes in the paths and the capacity. So in this case, our capacity of our storage, our paths can be anything we want. So let me just say store.bin. Our capacity, this is 50, so let's use 52. Okay, so I earlier defined a method called the create method that actually creates this storage file. Let's just look at it over here. So this method here basically creates this file from the paths, right? So let's do that. So we create this. Then after we've created it, the next thing we're going to do is create our file system. So all what our file system needs is just the storage. The other things are actually there by default. So we say fs is equals to storage, sorry, file system storage. Okay, so what do? We just do, I guess what we can do is just fs.info, the method we created last, which will give us the information about the file system. Then we can run this program. Let's see what we get. Ooh, okay, I think there is an error, and the error is one required argument. Okay, so right here during our block creation, we were supposed to set empty equals to true when the blocks were being created. So this should work now. And exactly, so we've just created a file system that has 53 bytes, and uh, total space is 50, and total space is 50 bytes too. So we're, because currently there is nothing stored in the storage device, so it's just 50 50 50 free space, 50 total space. So if you found this video interesting, drop a like. If you have any question, drop a comment, and if you want to see more contents like this, please subscribe.